This morning we're here at the Klamath Bird Observatory's bird monitoring station at the Jefferson Nature Center, which is along the Bear Creek Greenway. This morning we're capturing birds. We're also doing an education program with a group of school children who will see the process of capturing birds and placing a band on their leg and making lots of measurements and using that opportunity to explain to them what can be done in the field of bird conservation and how this is an important tool. This is one of our mist nets. You can see that it's a very fine mesh of a net, and it's constructed to have a small pocket to hold the bird when the bird flies into the net. When it feels any restriction of the netting on its wings, they tend to just stop beating their wings and they fall into these loose pockets where they get mildly tangled until we come around every 25-35 minutes or so, and we carefully extract the birds out of them. We've captured a black-capped chickadee. Typically we slip the netting off of one of the wings that's got tangled. That bit of the netting is usually around the head, and then after you get what was around the head off, that goes right to what's around the other wing, and then that slips right off. And the last step is often what they're grabbing with their foot. You just gently sort of like massaging the toes, trying to slip it off there. And there. And this one's already banded, which is this time of year kind of typical for a year-round species. We've probably had an opportunity to capture about all the chickadees in this immediate area, so they all have bands on them right now, or nearly all of them. All right. We learn about whether they've successfully had young that year, what habitat they're using. With each bird, we collect lots of different bits of data, and one is the mass, or the weight of the bird. And the way we do this is to set them inside the cup here where they're in a safe position, they don't struggle. And this bird is 9.8 grams, which is about the weight of a little less than a couple quarters. And this bird is called the wren tit. It's a year-round resident here in southern Oregon and here in the Rogue Valley. They're monogamous, and a male and a female will defend a territory throughout the year. Let's see what we've got here. When you have more than just a few birds, you sometimes forget what's inside, so it's like a little surprise when you stick your hand in to pull it out. This bird is a fox sparrow. It's a winter resident here, but does not nest in the Rogue Valley here. So these just started arriving about a month ago, and they'll be here throughout the winter. And this one already has a band, which is kind of fun. Because, especially since the band looks kind of old, I suspect that it was probably banded in some year previous to 2009. So I need to be very careful of recording the band number. 980162899. Now the first step I want to take is to look at the bird's skull through the top of the cranium. What I'll do, this technique is called sculling, and it involves using a couple drops of water to part the feathers on the top of the head, and then looking through the skin at looking for the extent of bone tissue growth in the head. Young birds that were hatched in 2009, this year, which we would call a hatching year bird, will have a less than completely ossified skull. Birds hatched in some year previous to 2009 on this date would have a completely ossified skull. And what I mean by completely ossified or incompletely ossified is that These small songbirds are hatched. When they hatch out of the egg, that they have one layer of bone in their skull. During the first 6 months of their life, a second layer grows, and we can see the progression of the growth of that second layer. It looks a little more whitish compared to a pinkish tissue color when we look through the very thin skin. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And you can see that the bird's pretty calm. I'm holding it in a manner to where it can't really struggle, but I'm not applying pressure anywhere on the bird's body. It's a very safe hold called the bander's grip. And this bird's skull is completely ossified. I like smoothing its dew back in place. So that means that this bird is what we would call an after hatch year. It was, on this date, it is in some year after its hatching year. And that's about as precise as we can be with this species. Okay, so as I suspected, it is not in breeding condition. It did not have a enlarged cloaca, which in most species indicates a breeding male. Did not have a brood patch or an incubation patch. That's something that females developed during the breeding season, where they molt or pluck all the feathers in the abdomen area, and that region of skin becomes very fluid-filled and swollen, and it helps facilitate transfer of body heat to the eggs when she's sitting on a nest. Did not have any body fat deposited, and birds really only have any fat on them when they're actively migrating. When a bird is settled down in a particular habitat, in this case this bird will be here for the next several months, or a year-round resident, they don't need to carry around that extra fat, so they don't bother with it. It would be detrimental to their getting around and moving quickly. It knows where its resources are from day to day, so it doesn't need to eat more than it needs. We just need to take its weight. This one's a lot more than that wren tit was, 21.7 grams. Okay. And I'm going to release this bird right here. We've got lots more for the last time. So this is a hermit thrush. People have been capturing and banding birds for long enough now, and we've figured out what size of band fits best for most of the species. Some species, it can be one of a couple different sizes, so we use this tool, a leg gauge, to measure the width of the tarsus, the unfeathered part of the bird's leg that we place the band over so it slides up and down easily. These gaps in this gauge are the same width as the inside diameter of the bands. But this species, we know, people have been capturing many years, that the size that's designated 1B fits it best. And if a bird bander's been working any length of time like I have, you get to memorize all that stuff. And I've got the band sizes for nearly everything we capture here in my head, so I don't have to look it up. So what I did there was to open up the band so I can slip it over the leg, and we use these specially machined tools that have these gaps that are just exactly the width of the band when it's closed. This prevents any over crimping of the band that might injure the bird in any way. If the band is placed open inside the pliers, slipped over the leg, when we crimp it shut, that is, squeeze the pliers shut, it's going to close the band without it over crimping or overlapping and getting too small. And that's a perfect fit on this bird. What we do, every bird we put a band on, is inspect how the band closed to make sure there's a tight fit there, and that it slides and spins easily up and down the tarsus here. We know from people who've studied that this does not cause any harm to the bird at all. There's many species of birds that we've learned live many years. This species, I believe the longevity record is 10 years and some odd months, and we learned that from a bird wearing a band that long, so we knew that individual lived that long.
So, and I want you guys to look at his beak and tell me, what do you guys think this bird has been eating? Can you see his berries? Berries. What kind of berries are black? Blackberries. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Do you keep the little wristband on even when you let them go?
So this band will stay on this bird for the rest of its life. And so we can catch this bird again year after year, and we can learn a lot of things about the bird.
For sure, just from the size of it, it's an ant, right? Yep. Oh, you're showing off. This is easy. It's a Hatchier male. That's easy to tell because it's got scattered magenta all over its head, in the throat and around the head. The adult male will have all of the head will be the bright magenta. It's brighter than just a purple. This is the only hummingbird species that's resident year-round here, the Anna's hummingbird. And they have an interesting trait that we can use to tell the age, besides the plumage, is striations or grooves in the upper mandible, the upper part of the bill. Young birds, the bill grows very rapidly while it's in the nest, and that causes little ridges or striations. And they wear away with age, but this one still has some. Yeah, I'm going to call it 20%. And then scattered magenta throughout head, so that makes it a young male. Female would not have it on the head at all. May have a scattered one or two in the throat, but that's it. And of course, we don't band the hummingbirds here in our project, 3.5. And for the amount of returns that we would get, that is a returned bird that has a band, so that we could learn more about what habitat it's using, where it may have gone, how long it may have lived. It's very small, especially in light of all the extra work involved with this. So that's why we've decided not to do that. Also, there's the factor of that they're a little more prone to getting stressed out from the handling. So what we do is identify the species, record the date, time, and net capture, and figure out the age and sex and release them.